So imagine that you're trapped inside like a container or a box right in this room. And you can't leave, you can't go get a drink, you can't get up and get a cheeseburger, you can't go about your business and live your life. And you didn't sign up to be trapped inside this room, as much as you cry and squeal and beg and kind of kick down the door, it's not going anywhere, you're just trapped. But that's how animals feel inside testing laboratories. They didn't sign up to be tested for, but they're in there. They can't go anywhere, they can't do anything about it. Now I'm Nico, and animals have limited rights, which have a cause and effect between testing for human benefits, which has effects on the animal's health. So in discussing these animal rights, we're going to learn about their lack of rights, the animal activists who fight for their rights in the future, and we're also going to learn about the effects those rights have on the animals. So let's start off with the basics. We got to start from the bottom. Now, animals don't have rights. They have legal protections. They're protected against extinction, abuse, and unlawful living conditions. And you can't hit an animal. If there's too many animals on one property, it's unsafe because of fighting and they'll kill each other and stuff like that. Now, animals by law are considered as property, and their classification of property is to serve human interests. It's not even to protect them, says Gerald Tannenbaum, who wrote an article on animals and the law, property, cruelty, and rights. Now, to an animal activist, they will argue three things. They will argue that personal property is an inanimate object. This is an inanimate object. It's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't have feelings. It can't feel pain, and it doesn't have a heartbeat. Secondly, they're going to argue that inanimate things cannot have rights. This doesn't have a right to be here. If I want to chop this up in a million pieces, that's what I'm going to do, and no one's going to do anything about it. And then the third thing is that if the law is to give animals their rights, they have to take away the classification of them being property. So, who are these activists that fight for their rights? Well, let's get into that. There's many of them, but there's three big ones. The first one is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, also known as PETA. Now, they're a non-profit group with over 300 employees and 2 million members worldwide. And as Wesley Smith states in his article, 4 Legs Good, 2 Legs Bad, the Anti-Human Values of Animal Rights, that PETA are committed animal lovers who will pose nude to protect fur. And their founder, Ingrid Newkirk, she founded the company the organization in 1980 in Norfolk, Virginia. And she's very famously quoted for saying, "There is no rational basis for saying a human has special rights. A rat is a pig, is a dog, is a boy." Which is saying that there's no difference from the bottom of the chain to the top of the chain. We all have living heartbeats, and we all should have the same rights, is what she says. Now, the other group is the Animal Liberation Front. They're a little bit different. They get a bad rep for attacks on testing labs. So Scott Smallwood summarized in his article, Britain bans American professor who speaks on the behalf of the ALF, which is the Animal Liberation Front, that they're described as domestic terrorists by the FBI. But even though they're described as that, they've never hurt anyone physically. What they do is, when you Google them, they kind of look like the covers of a Call of Duty game. They'll have their ski masks on and their guns in their hand, and they'll be all camoed up. And they'll go in there, guns blazing, but they'll never fire. They'll kind of use it as a front. And they'll free the animals. And when they free the animals, they'll put them in safe houses, or they'll put them in sanctuaries that they have built for them around the country. So their defense is that they use guns and stuff like that, even though they don't hurt anybody, they use it for the right reasons is their defense. Now the Justice Department, the third organization, they're very different. They openly and willingly say, we're going to use violence against you if you're against animal rights. So there was an instance on Christmas in 1993 on a Shamrock Farm, which was a supplier to primates, to animal experimentations and stuff like that. And the Justice Department did not like that at all. And they said, well, we're going to get them out of there. So what they did was they put exploding pipe bombs in the labs and just blew everything up and freed the animals, and people got hurt. And they willingly say, Alison Schneider, explains in her article, that as threats of violence escalate, primate researchers stand firm that the Justice Department for Animals has said that abusers to have what a taste of fear and anguish that their victims suffer on a daily basis. They pretty much argue that an eye for an eye. If you're going to hurt animals and abuse animals and not ask them if they want to be tested, we're going to do the same to you. Give you a taste of their medicine. So now let's look into how the animals are used for medicine and food purposes. What really ticks off these animal activists? What gets them going? What gets some exploding pipe bombs going? Well, there's a biotechnology, which is a study in science that uses animals for a process of enografting, which is using animal tissue for the benefit of humans. So as Monica Confetti explains in her article, Natural and Unnatural Activists and Representations of Animal Biotechnology, the animals are used as spare parts bins for the lack of human donors. Animals are scientifically raised crossing genes to create a species to serve as a human organ donor. So pretty much they're being raised and crossbred like a chicken and a cow and a pig to find the right combination to what's going to serve as a good liver that can work in a human. So they're going to be raised to be killed, to be served for human purposes. And that's what really takes off animal activists. Now, the PETA president, Ingrid Newkirk, was asked, would you sacrifice 5,000 chimps to cure AIDS? And she replied, a very famous quote, that, would you be opposed to experiment on your daughter if you knew it would save 5 million people? So you can kind of see where, they kind of differ, like, science, wants to do this for humans, and other people are saying, well, it's still wrong. So that's why they differ. So before we get into the ugly truth about how the food gets to the table, we're just going to watch this flip. As you can see, it's pretty tough to see like what happens inside, industrial farms. So the ugly truth is, there's 400 to 500 pound, animals at times, kind of like the pigs that you saw in their boards, or whatever else might be, cattle, and that they're in a 7-foot crate that's like 22 inches wide, and they'll never see the light of day. There's light maybe through the windows. That's about it. They don't all go in the grass and eat grass, and they're not happy and stuff like that. It's not the reality of it. And as George Will explains in his article, what we eat, he explains that, pigs only know the feeling of concrete and metal instead of grass. They don't know the real feeling of living and how they should be, how they should live. They're covered in their own urine, and they have broken legs from either trying to escape or, just from trying to turn in such a crowded area. And that animals, they chew on the bar and the chains because they're so used to chewing on like straw that they have like nothing to chew on, such as with their natural instincts. So that just goes to show you, like, the truth of what really happens, in industrial farms. So today we learned about, animals that really don't have rights, they have legal protections, and they're seen as property by law. There are animal activists, both violent and non-violent, that will fight for these rights, hopefully in the future, in their minds, to be passed. And that science uses, animals, abuses their rights to kill them, to use organs for human benefits, and abuses them clearly in industrial farms for human purposes. And that's all I got for you today.